Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, and a very, very warm welcome on this very wet Monday afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to introduce your host for this afternoon, the Lord Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Chief Rabbi is representative of other faiths and friends. It's my privilege to host and welcome you in my position as Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on British Jews, which is a bit of a mouthful, but the Board of Deputies provides Secretariat to the APPG. The APPG briefs parliamentarians on issues of Jewish concern. Most recently, we have encouraged participation in debates on organ donation, encouraged attendance at our Mitzvah Day drop-in, and run an event on the implication of Brexit for the Jewish community, as well as for everybody else. Membership of the APPG in the Houses of Parliament has increased to 130 parliamentarians. Now, I'm also at this function putting on my Liberal Democrat hat, so you don't get two speeches. I'm moulding them into one, and I am representing the Liberal Democrat parliamentarians. So often you can find relevance and meaning in Jewish festivals, whether or not you're Jewish. You don't need me to tell you that Hanukkah is a festival of light. The Hanukkah, recording the miracle of the temple oil, reflects an age-old human yearning at this darkest moment of the year for the return of longer days and light. I can't help but feel there is a Westminster metaphor for us in this somewhere. Although I hope that at this moment of greatest political darkness, it won't take a miracle to once again find us some light. Hanukkah has many layers of meaning. The story of the Maccabees serves as a political as well as a religious allegory. It's a call to arms, a patriotic tale, a refusal to accept the dying of the light. I don't pretend to know what will happen in the next few days in this establishment or in the country. But Hanukkah should serve to remind us that even in the depths of winter, there is light for those prepared to search for it. I now have great pleasure in handing over to Mary van der Zeel, President of the Board of Deputies. I wish you all a Hanukkah Sameach.
Thank you, Lord Palmer. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 2018 Hanukkah reception. My name is Marie van der Zeel, and I'm delighted to be here for my first Hanukkah as President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, having been elected as the second woman in history earlier this year. Thank you again, Lord Palmer, and also special thanks to Wes Streeting and Paul Masterson for all your hard work chairing the APPG. As with all parliamentary events, we are somewhat at the mercy of the business of the House. I understand that the Prime Minister is currently giving a statement on her recent visit to the G20 and its implications for Brexit. So I know that some of our guests will be along after that, and a couple of our speakers cannot now make it. Please bear with us if there are pauses and changes to the programme. I know that you will. I suppose that it is an apt summary of the parliamentary year that Brexit has caused a bit of disruption to our programme. Looking back at the 6 months since I was elected, I realised I could have picked a quieter time to start. Whether it was the horrific far-right massacre in Pittsburgh, anti-Semitism being allowed to take root in the Labour Party, Hamas's attacks on Israeli citizens, Camden's coroner preventing the speedy burial of our loved ones, tensions in relation to interpretation of education policies in the Haredi schools, or attempts in Iceland's parliament to ban religious circumcision, it has never been a more important time to have a strong Board of Deputies leading the fight for our community. And we could not do any of this without the support of our many parliamentary friends, or indeed many of our other colleagues here today. Thank you. The horrific far-right terrorist attack in Pittsburgh really shocked me, as it did all of us. But there was one glimmer of hope. When we organised a vigil with JW3, our senior rabbis, the US and Israeli ambassadors, the Home Secretary and the Mayor of London dropped everything to be with us. We have built strong relationships across the national leadership. When we made the call, they came. Earlier this year, we did the same with our communal colleagues, the JLC and the CST, at the Enough is Enough rally in Parliament Square, where 2,000 people from the community, from Parliament and from different faiths came to join us to show Jeremy Corbyn that his tolerance for anti-Semitism did not want to be in this position. Anti-Semitic terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, his friends, defending anti-Semitic murals, laying wreaths by the graves of terrorists, or allowing so many racists and their apologists to remain as Labour members. Labour must kick out the racists from the party, no ifs, no buts, and it must do so without further delay. Enough is enough. But while it is easy to see the negatives of this year, I think it is important to remember the very many positives. Despite the challenges, the Jewish community in the UK is flourishing. Our Jewish schools continue to top the league tables, and we are delighted to have so many of them represented here today. We are building bridges with different communities to tackle prejudice and promote peace. While Arab-Jewish relations often get a bad press, I am delighted that we have with us, please make yourselves known, the ambassadors of Tunisia and Morocco, as well as the Israeli ambassador. And we also have the German ambassador and many, many other people who are our friends. This gives us great hope for the future, and the Board of Deputies stands ready and willing to build bridges across divides. One of the projects I am proudest of is our Invest in Peace initiative, with Churches Together, Britain and Ireland, where UK faith communities are actively contributing to peacemaking efforts between Israelis and Palestinians. We have a thriving cultural scene with fantastic institutions like Limud and JW3. Our community continues to contribute to society in so many different ways, and we are determined that the UK remains a great place to be Jewish. As we light the lights of Chanukah and draw to the end of 2018, let us all unite in our efforts to banish the darkness of 2018 and work together to make 2019 a better year for our community and for our country. Thank you. Given the difficulties of the past years between the Labour community and our community, it is perhaps inevitable that attempts to engage are fraught with controversy and complexity. But I believe we have to communicate if we are to overcome the present challenges. And I would like to ask Angela Rayner, Shadow Education Secretary, to speak to us now.
Thank you and good afternoon, and I truly am thankful that you've given me this opportunity to join you today. And I know that that invitation wasn't universally popular. So straight off, let me deal with the elephant in the room. Some years ago, I wrote an article reflecting on my visits to Auschwitz, intending to show my solidarity with the Jewish community over the Holocaust and modern anti-Semitism. It included a reference that now I deeply regret, and I would certainly not use it again. And I can only repeat how sorry that I am for that. And as Shadow Education Secretary, I often reflect that we all have a lot to learn, including myself. And that is exactly why I want to engage with the Jewish community. But I know that this all goes wider and deeper. You don't have to go far to find views that are rooted not in lack of education or engagement, but in simple bigotry. This year, we have seen the horrifying consequences of that culture of conspiracy, theory, and outright bigotry about Israel and Jewish people generally. That must be confronted in the wider society, but we cannot rest as a party until we have also rooted out anti-Semitism within our own ranks. I know that it's taken far too long and has been appalling, and I've seen the abuse that my colleagues Luciana Berger, Ruth Smith, Louise Ellman and Margaret Hodge, amongst others, have received. And I have no doubt the fact that they are Jewish women has been a big part of that abuse. And it must be stamped out for good. And I truly hope that we are now making progress with changes to speed up and strengthen our internal procedures. And I'm glad that the likes of Tony Greenstein have been expelled, and I want us to be clear that those who distort history with likening Hitler to Zionism are no longer welcome. The changes that we passed at party conference should make that much easier, and I'm confident that we will see more progress. I very much hope and expect that outstanding cases will be dealt with swiftly and appropriately without further delay. Quite simply, anti-Semitism can have no place in our party. It is perfectly possible to criticise any government, including the Israeli government, without being racist. But there is simply no excuse for anti-Semitic tropes. That is why I'm glad the Labour Party has adopted the IRA definition of anti-Semitism and all its examples. I wish we had made progress much faster, but now we must enforce it. And if we are to tackle this problem, we need to engage meaningfully with the Board of Deputies and other representatives here, because we cannot be content until the Jewish community is satisfied that we are making progress. And part of me being here today is to assure you that I want to make that progress with you as well. Above all, I'm conscious that it's actions that matter and not just words. And as Shadow Education Secretary, I've read the Board of Deputies' Jewish manifesto, and it's clear that there's a lot of consensus between us. Jewish schools play a vital role now, and they will continue to do so as part of Labour's National Education Service. I saw myself the great work done by Jewish schools like King David High in Manchester on my visit there, where I was able to speak to staff and to students. I recently announced policies to ensure schools are accountable to their communities they serve. I want to be clear that we will not stop faith schools, including Jewish schools, retaining their character and the ethos, nor admission systems that don't preserve this. Students and staff in Jewish schools must feel safe with their necessary measures taken to guarantee their security. I know that there are real concerns about the current relationship between the strictly Orthodox Jewish schools and both Ofsted and the Department for Education, and I have made clear my own concerns with Ofsted too. When the department talks about British values, then it should be clear religious tolerance is one of our British values. I'm sure that we all agree that every child deserves an excellent education and to be safe in school that has supported them and that has helped them to succeed. So there is a duty on all of us to support every child, whatever, no matter what gender or sexuality, and to respect the ethos of the different communities. And my starting point is dialogue and not diktat, including with the Board of Deputies and with all traditions within the Jewish community, to ensure that every Jewish child can thrive in our education system. I truly believe the power of education to improve our shared life. Education comes from engaging and learning from one another, and I thank you for that opportunity to do so. Let me end with this. I know we face a huge challenge to regain the trust of the Jewish community, but it's a challenge that we in the Labour Party must meet, and we must do so with our actions and not just our words. To you, your family, your friends, I wish you a happy Chanukah. Thank you.
Thank you. We had been due to have with us the Foreign Secretary, but owing to the G20 statement you can see on screen, unfortunately all the Cabinet Ministers have currently had to give their apologies. At short notice, however, I am delighted that Lord Pickles has stepped forward. Hear, hear. Lord Pickles is an unparalleled friend to our community, not least in his role as UK Envoy on post-Holocaust issues and co-chair of the UK's Holocaust Memorial Foundation. We are delighted to have you with us, and I invite you to speak to us now.
Well, thank you. Thanks to you, Chairman, that all the Cabinet is not available, so it's just me. So you kind of appreciate this, because Chanukah, about 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of understand how it sort of pushed its way through officialdom. I was travelling to Jerusalem, and I was travelling on El Al. And you know what it's like when you arrive there. They ask you more questions than your mum did when you arrived late as a teenager. And they're asking the kind of people that I'm going to be meeting, and I say I'm going to be meeting the Education Minister, I'm going to be meeting I'm going to be meeting the President of Israel. And you could see the guy was beginning to think I was taking the mickey out of him. and he was like this tall. And an official from El Al, a female, came round. She was about this high. And she walked up to him, clipped him round the ears and said, "Oh, just shut up. This is Eric Pickles. He's quite harmless." Give him a donut. And I was quite pleased to have been recognised, but not so pleased to have been described as harmless. Now, I'm the lead on IRA. I'm the UK head of delegation, and played a part in bringing the IRA definition, which is from America right the way across Europe and pretty soon Australia, is adopted as a standard. I want to assure people it was never ever my intention to cause any problems to any political party within the United Kingdom. Never. And indeed, initially everyone accepted it. But I think we need to be clear, and this isn't really just to the UK. There are some who object to the examples. And the reason that they object to the examples is really for 4 things. They want to be able to call Israel an apartheid state. They want to be able to say that Jewish people owe a greater loyalty to Israel than the country in which they were born. They want to be able to say that Israel is like the Nazis, and they want to be able to have a higher standard to judge Israel against the Middle East. Now, I don't regard any of those as free speech. I regard all those four things as bigotry. What I think people sometimes have missed, because colleagues sometimes say, well, it needs to be put into law. It's not legally binding. I can't think of anything more disastrous than making it legally binding, because politicians would then get their hands on it, and they want to amend certain things. They want to change things. So it's much better the way it is. But it's not just a declaration. It's not just about once you've signed it, that's it. That's the beginning. And it's in our Crown Prosecution Service. It's in the health service. It's in local government. It's in our schools. It's in the Church of England. And it's gradually going to do its best to start to change people's attitudes, to start to ensure that we fully recognise that the Jewish culture, that the Jewish way of life, that the Jewish standards are a fundamental part of the British identity. And without that, Britain is diminished. And I think if we've had to go through this process in the United Kingdom, if that is understood, if that is valued, then it might just have been worth it, because it's not just a question of standing firm with our Jewish friends. I actually rather like the sound of this all-party group. I'd like to join if that'd be okay. It's not just a question of standing in Parliament. It's not just a question of standing together. It's standing together as British people, for British people, to ensure that British people have a right to express their religion in public without fear, without looking over their shoulders, and to celebrate that with those members of the British community who are Jewish. Happy Hanukkah. Where's my donut?
This year marks 70 years since the establishment of the State of Israel. Despite the country's challenges, we are so proud of its many achievements, whether it's democracy, its life-saving science, or its relationship with our own country, Britain. I'm very pleased now to invite Israel's ambassador, Mark Regev, to greet us on behalf of the State of Israel.
Chief Rabbi, President of the Board, parliamentarians, friends, Lord Palmer said Hanukkah is the festival of light, which is correct, 100% correct. But it's also known as the festival of freedom. It's the inspirational story of a small group of heroic Jews who over 20 centuries ago beat the odds. They bravely stood up to their oppressors, and they successfully regained our people's independence in the land of Israel. Just as the historical Maccabees beat the odds, then we Jews continue to beat the odds now. It was just 70 years ago, in 1948, despite being attacked by all the neighboring Arab states, we regained our sovereignty in our homeland. And just over 5 decades ago, in 1967, when Israel was once again threatened with destruction, we nevertheless prevailed. In both 1948 and 1967, there were those who said the Jewish state would not survive, that the odds were against us. But in these past 7 decades, the truth is that the Jewish state has not merely survived, it has thrived. Israel today is strong and stands out as a beacon of freedom, democracy, and prosperity in a very, very troubled region. And just as Israel has beaten the odds over these past 7 decades, I am confident that diaspora communities will overcome the ugly anti-Semitism they face today. I know that when I see the numerous friends and allies we have in this struggle, many of whom are with us now at this moment. I know that also because of the resilience demonstrated by the community and specifically by the board during these very challenging times. So as we light the candles, let this message of hope, of overcoming the odds, strengthen our resolve and inspire us all. I wish each and every one of you a very, very happy Chanukah. Chag Chanukah Sameach.
I am delighted to be able to tell you that we have the unexpected pleasure of Sir Vince Cable, leader of the Liberal Democrats, who's very kindly agreed to address us now. So please come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Excellency, Chief Rabbi, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honour to follow my colleague and friend, Lord Palmer, just very briefly to express my own and my party's best wishes to you on the Hanukkah celebration. As you had the me to tell you, it's the festival of light, in a way the normal human wish to emerge from the darkest part of the year to something more positive and optimistic, and we can see that on different levels of metaphor and different levels of meaning. I know that there is deep concern here about the way in which anti-Semitism has resurfaced or surfaced in a particularly pernicious way in the last year or two, and it's something we must all condemn and distance ourselves from, which I'm very anxious to do. It's also in some ways a sort of metaphor for the politics of our country, and I'm hoping that we emerge to the light in a similar way. But I simply wish to express my greetings of Hanukkah Sameach to you. Thank you.
Our community is blessed with tremendous spiritual leaders across every denomination. I'm delighted to see with us today Rabbi Laura Jana Klausner, Senior Rabbi to Reform Judaism, Rabbi Danny Rich, Senior Rabbi and CEO of Liberal Judaism. I'm also very pleased to welcome many of our friends from the Haredi community with whom we have a closer relationship with than we have had in decades. I would now like to invite the Chief Rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, to address us and lead us in lighting the Hanukkah candles. He will be supported in this endeavour by the choir of the wonderful Clor Tikva School from Redbridge. As we know, all the best things come from Essex, and if you want proof, please make sure that you come to Limud for the panel session on the power of Essex, being promoted there.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
singing.
Yes.
Sorry. I'd really like to. Someone's taken the microphone. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Sorry. Apologies. There we are. I'd like to thank you all so much for coming, particularly all of our speakers and the wonderful choir. You've done a fantastic job from Clor Tikva. Please, everybody, mingle. Refreshments are available, and Chanukah Sameach. And I'm just told we are going to be treated to 2 more songs. So here we go. I'm handing over to you.
And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. Oh dreidel, 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 I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. I have a lovely body with legs so short and thin. And when I get all tired, I drop and then I win. Oh dreidel, 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 I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. My dreidel's always playful, it loves to dance and spin. A happy game of dreidel, come play now, let's begin. Oh dreidel, 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 I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. Oh sevivon, sof, 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 Chanukah, ukhatov, Chanukah, ukhatov, sevivon, sof, 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 sona sof ba'olam, nes gadol haya sham. Little dreidels spin and turn on Chanukah when candles burn, on Chanukah when candles burn. Little dreidels spin and turn, celebrate with song and prayer. A wondrous miracle happened there, a wondrous miracle happened there. Celebrate with song and prayer. Sevivon, sof, 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 Chanukah, ukhatov, Chanukah, ukhatov, sevivon, sof, 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 sona sof ba'olam, nes gadol haya sham. Sona sof ba'olam, nes gadol haya sham.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Everyone, please enjoy yourself and have some 5 minutes. Okay, what's in 5 minutes? Oh, okay.